There is a smell that means autumn to every plain person who has ever lived, and it is not pumpkin and it is not wood smoke, though those are dear too. It is apple butter cooking down slow in a great copper kettle over a fire all day long, dark and sweet and spiced, stirred without ceasing from morning until night. Apple butter is not a jam and it is not a sauce. It is its own thing entirely. A deep, dark spice spread cooked down so long and so slow that the apples turn almost black and thick enough to stand a spoon in. Sweet and rich and full of cinnamon and clove, and there is nothing on this earth quite like. It spread thick on a slice of fresh bread on a cold morning. Plain families have made it this same way for 200 years and more, and the making of it is one of the great gatherings of the autumn, a whole day of community and work and fellowship around the steaming kettle. Today, I am going to teach you how to make it both the old kettle way and a way you can do in your own kitchen with the amounts exact so that you can have this deep autumn treasure in your own home. Let me tell you first about the apple butter day, the old way, the community way, because it is one of the most beautiful traditions we have, and I want you to understand it, even if you make yours on a stove. In the fall, when the apples come in, a plain family or a group of families would gather for an apple butter making, a whole day given over to it. They would set up the great copper kettle outdoors over a fire, a kettle so big it might hold many gallons, and they would fill it with apples and cider, and then they would cook it down all day long. And the crucial thing, the thing that made it a community event, is that the apple butter must be stirred constantly without ever stopping from the moment it starts until it is done, hour after hour after hour, or it will scorch and burn on the bottom of the kettle and be ruined. So there was a special stir, a long-handled wooden paddle or stir, sometimes with a handle many feet long, so a person could stand back from the heat, and the people took turns stirring hour by hour, all through the day, the whole community sharing the long labor of it. The children stirred, the old folks stirred, everyone took a turn at the paddle, and while they stirred, they talked and sang and visited. And it was work and it was fellowship both the whole long day around the steaming, fragrant kettle, and at the end of it, gallons and gallons of dark, sweet apple butter to be jarred and shared among all who helped. That is Apple Butter Day, and it is one of the sweetest gatherings of the plain year. I remember Apple Butter Days from my girlhood so vividly, perhaps more than almost any other day of the plain year, for they were pure magic to a child. The great copper kettle set up over the fire in the cool of the autumn morning, the wagon loads of apples, the whole extended family and the neighbors gathering, the fire crackling, and the kettle beginning to steam. And that smell rising up all day, the apples and the cider, and then the cinnamon and clove going in, filling the whole yard, the whole farm with the deepest, sweetest autumn smell there is. And the stirring, the long wooden paddle that even I got to take a turn at when I was big enough, standing back from the heat, moving that paddle slow through the thick, bubbling butter, feeling how heavy it grew as the day went on and the butter thickened, and the grown folks visiting all day, the men and the women taking their turns, the old stories told, the singing sometimes, the little ones running about, the babies passed from arm to arm. And at the end, as the sun went down, the butter finally done, dark and thick and glorious, and the ladling of it into jar after jar after jar, still hot, and everyone going home in the dusk with their share, tired and happy and smelling of wood smoke and apples and spice. Those were some of the best days of my whole childhood. And I can call them back in an instant just by opening a jar of apple butter, the smell carrying me straight back 60 years and more to the fire and the kettle and all those beloved faces, most of them gone now, but alive again for a moment in that deep, sweet smell. Now, you likely do not have a copper kettle and a fire and a whole community to stir it. And that is all right, for you can make wonderful apple butter right in your own kitchen, on the stove, or easiest of all, in a slow cooker. And I will teach you that way with the amounts so anyone can make it. Let me give you the recipe. You start with apples, of course, and you want good cooking apples. Tart ones are best, or a mix of tart and sweet. You will need about 4 pounds of apples, which is a good number of them, 10 or 12 apples, depending on their size. You peel them and core them and cut them into chunks. In the old kettle way, whole apples went in and were worked through a sieve later. But for the home way, we peel and core first, which is simpler. You put your apple chunks in a large pot or a slow cooker, and to them, you add cider or apple juice, about a cup, or a little water, just enough to keep them from sticking while they start to cook down. And you cook them until they are very soft, mush soft, either simmering gently on the stove, stirring often, or in the slow cooker on low for some hours. When the apples are cooked to soft mush, you mash them well or run them through a sieve or a food mill for a smoother butter, or use one of those hand blenders right in the pot until you have a smooth applesauce. And now the real cooking begins, the long, slow cooking down that turns ordinary applesauce into apple butter. And this is where patience makes all the difference. To your smooth applesauce, you now add the sugar and the spices that make it apple butter. For about 4 pounds of apples, you add around 2 cups of sugar, though you can use less if your apples are sweet or you like it less sweet. And you can use white sugar or brown, and brown sugar gives a lovely deeper flavor. And the spices, which are the soul of apple butter, you add 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, a good bit of cinnamon for that warm autumn flavor, and half a teaspoon of ground cloves and a half teaspoon of allspice if you like, and some add a little nutmeg too. And a good pinch of salt, which lifts all the flavors. Some old recipes add a splash of vinegar, a tablespoon or two, and it brightens and balances the sweetness, and I do recommend it. Stir all that in. And now let me pause for just a moment because I want to say something to you from my heart. If you are enjoying these old recipes, if you love learning these plain ways, I want to ask you kindly to subscribe to my kitchen. It is a small thing for you, just a tap, but it is a great help to me, for it is what lets me keep making these videos and sharing these old ways with you and with others who love them. When you subscribe, you help this old kitchen keep going, and you make sure these recipes do not pass out of the world. So if you are able, please do subscribe and know that you are helping keep the old ways alive. Now, back to our apple butter. For now comes the long, slow magic. Now you cook it down, long and slow. And this is the whole secret of apple butter, the long, slow cooking that concentrates it and darkens it and thickens it and deepens all its flavor. On the stove, you simmer it very gently, uncovered, stirring often so it does not scorch for hours, 2 or 3 hours or more, until it is dark and thick. In a slow cooker, which is the easiest way and the way I most recommend for a home kitchen. You cook it on low with the lid propped open a little to let the steam escape for a long time, 8 or 10 hours or even longer, stirring now and then until it cooks way down and turns dark and thick. You will know it is done when it is deep brown, almost mahogany, and thick enough that a spoonful mounted on a plate holds its shape and does not weep liquid around the edges. That is the test my grandmother used. A spoonful on a cold plate, and if the butter held together with no ring of liquid around it, it was done. It takes a long time to get there, and you cannot rush it for the long. Slow cooking is what makes apple butter, and not just spiced applesauce. Patience, always, in the best things. Patience. As it cooks down through those long hours, you will watch it slowly transform, the pale applesauce darkening shade by shade, from gold to amber to russet to that deep dark brown, and thickening, growing glossy and heavy, the volume shrinking down and down as the water cooks away and all the flavor concentrates. It is a slow magic to watch, and the smell fills your whole house all the while, deepening and richening as the hours pass. There is something deeply satisfying in a food that asks only for time and patience and rewards you so richly for them, and apple butter is chief among them. When it is dark and thick and done, you can put it up. If you are keeping it in the ice box, just spoon it into jars, let it cool, and refrigerate, and it keeps for weeks. If you want it shelf stable for the winter, you can can it in a boiling water bath, spooning the hot apple butter into hot, clean jars, wiping the rims, sealing, and processing in the water bath for about 10 minutes, the way I showed you with the tomatoes. And then it keeps a year or more in the cellar. Either way, what you have is a treasure, dark and thick and spiced, ready to spread on your bread all through the cold months. Let me tell you the ways we ate apple butter, for they are many and all of them good. Spread thick on fresh bread or on a warm biscuit or on toast. That is the classic, and there is nothing better on a cold morning. It went on the breakfast table always right beside the butter. And I told you before how the children would mix the two together on their bread, apple butter and butter both, and the old folks pretended to disapprove and did the same. It is wonderful on a warm slice of that no-knead bread I taught you, or stirred into oatmeal, or spooned over pancakes, or alongside pork, for apple and pork are old friends. It goes on top of cottage cheese, sweet against the mild, fresh curds. It is baked into apple butter pies and stirred into cakes and cookies. And it is simply good eaten off a spoon, though a plain mother would scold you for that. However you eat it, that deep, dark, spiced apple flavor is pure autumn, pure comfort, pure, plain goodness. Let me give you a few tips and a few notes so yours comes out right. First, on the apples, a mix is best. Some tart, like the old cooking apples, and some sweet, for the mix gives the deepest flavor, but use what you have, for almost any apple makes good apple butter. You do not need fancy apples. Indeed, the humble ones, the seconds, the windfalls, the ones not pretty enough to eat out of hand, those are perfect for apple butter, which is another bit of plain thrift, using up the apples that would otherwise go to waste. Second, on the sweetness, taste as you go and suit yourself. For apples vary greatly in their sweetness, and you may want more or less sugar, and it is easy to add more, but you cannot take it out. So start with less and add. Third, the spices are to your taste too. And some like a heavy hand with the cinnamon and clove, and some a lighter one. So make it the way your family loves it. Fourth, and this is important, when apple butter cooks down thick, it can sputter and pop like a little volcano, for it is thick and hot. So mind your hands, stir carefully, and if on the stove, keep the heat gentle. And last, do not rush it. I know I say that with every good thing, but it is truest of all with apple butter. For the whole magic is in the long, slow cooking, and apple butter hurried is just thick applesauce, while apple butter cooked long and slow and patient is something far deeper and richer and better. Give it the time. It is worth every hour. Let me tell you what apple butter meant and means in plain life, for it is more than a spread. It is autumn itself, caught in a jar. It is the taste of the season of harvest and gathering and Thanksgiving, the season when the year's work comes to fruit and the cellar fills and the community draws together against the coming cold. And the making of it, the old kettle way, is one of the great community gatherings, a whole day of shared labor and fellowship, everyone taking their turn at the paddle, the children and the grandparents all together around the fragrant steaming kettle, and at the end, everyone going home with jars of the dark, sweet butter they all made together. That is the plain way at its most beautiful. Work and joy and community all woven into one, and the sweet, dark result of it spread on bread all winter long, each jar carrying the memory of that golden autumn day around the kettle. When I spread apple butter on my bread in the deep of winter, I taste the autumn it was made in, the fire and the fellowship and the long day of stirring, and it warms me twice over, once for the sweetness and once for the memory. So this autumn, when the apples come in, make some apple butter. You need not have a copper kettle or a whole community, though if you can make it with others, do, for it is far better shared. But even alone, in your own kitchen, in a slow cooker, you can make this dark, sweet, spiced treasure and fill your home with the smell of it, that deep autumn smell of apples and cinnamon and clove cooking slowly down, and then spread it thick on your bread all winter long and taste the autumn in every bite. It is patience and apples and spice turned into one of the great simple pleasures of the cold season, and it has warmed plain families through 200 winters and more, and now it can warm yours. And if you gather others to help you make it, so much the better. For apple butter has always been a thing best made together. And you may just start a new autumn tradition of your own that your children will remember all their lives, the way I remember mine. If you would like this recipe written out with all its amounts and every other recipe I know, all the autumn treasures and the preserves and the old dishes my grandmother taught me, they are gathered together in my kitchen field book, waiting for you just below this video. 100 recipes from Lancaster County, going all the way back to 1720, written down the way I would tell them to you if you were sitting right here at my table. And if you are new to my kitchen and you have not yet done it, please do subscribe and come and sit with me a while. For every subscriber helps me keep making these videos and keeping these old ways alive. And it means more to me than I can say. I share these recipes every few days, and I would be so glad to have you back for the next one. There is always room here for one more. Until next time, God bless your hands, God bless your kitchen, and God bless every soul who gathers at your table. Now go and make some apple butter.